So there is a rule and regulation. You cannot simply use it as you like, okay? And you also cannot produce it. If you want others to use it, your product, you cannot simply just produce and distribute. It has to be registered, okay? So we will see about the pesticide legislation and registration today, and also a group of pesticide. Okay. So pesticide is actually derived from Latin words meaning pestis, meaning plague, or the one that will spread, okay, and then side meaning to kill. Okay, so the word pesticide come from these two words, pestis and side. And when we are talking about pesticide, which is chemical, it can be any substance or any mixture of substance. It can be substance just simply one type of chemical, or maybe you can mix a few active ingredients inside. So, or the one we say as a mixture of substance. So the purpose is to prevent, either to destroy, repelling, or mitigating any type of pest. And sometimes certain pesticides specific for a certain pest. So here, according to the law, a pesticide preparation is actually to control or to prevent, to destroy, to repel, and anything like macam fungi. We have previously, I mentioned to you, we have fungicide, okay, specialized for fungi. And then also certain parasitic plant or bacteria on plant, and maybe to control pests on fruits, animal or other properties, and also include juga some sort of macam disease caused by the insects. And then pesticides, okay, is also to control the spread of any harmful animal. So it doesn't mean it's just simply on insects or weeds or maybe fungi. No, it's also include animals, pests like birds maybe, or the plant itself, such as the weed. So any type yang you consider as pests, okay, there are some sort of pesticide or chemical to control it. Okay, so that's how the law justify the definition of the pesticide. So it can be used in both at home, in private garden, as well as if you have an orchard. Usually for farmers that have a pressure to provide food, especially at low price, or rely on pesticide to maximize their harvest. Okay, based on IPM, like I said previously, the last choice, okay, last choice or last method we have to use to control the infestation of pests so that it won't reach economic injury level, okay, it's just by using a chemical, which is pesticide. Okay, so otherwise we won't get the profit, or maybe you cannot provide food at low price lah, kan, maksudnya sebab you use a lot of pesticide, for example, so the cost tu dah bertambah, and then you have to think about that part as well. Okay, and the use of pesticide in farming often rely on the fact that level that we use to kill the pest supposedly is low enough to affect human health. Okay, maksudnya let's say kalau kamu guna pesticide tu which is will affect the human health, then it can be you can be sentenced or taken action under the pesticide law, okay, or pesticide act, Akta pesticide. Okay, so general structure of pesticide law, it doesn't matter whether in Malaysia or in overseas. Okay, usually they have a common characteristic, like you have to, the law have to have a short title like Pesticide Acts, okay, for example, right? And then the purpose of acts, like maybe you want to control the manufacturer of the manufacturing process of the pesticide. Maybe you want to control distribution of this pesticide. So tu semua should be listed in under the purpose of the act, and then the interpretation of the acts, who the one involved and so on, and for the act as well, it's also listed institutional organization, function and power, such as here I put it as a committee. So under this act, you have to have you have to have a committee that justify, okay, sama ada law ni this pesticide follow rules or regulation under the pesticide act ke tak ke. So you have to have a committee inside this pesticide law. And then enforcement officers and so on, also dia punya justification, dia punya function or dia punya power, how can they enforce the law, also should be listed in this law. Okay, and then pesticide registration, like I said, and licensing scheme also need to be clearly listed. And then how to labeling the pesticide, I mean, what is the requirement when you want to register or when you want to label a new pesticide and so on. So semua tu adalah di bawah akta or di bawah pesticide law. Okay, ini juga termasuk macam how to advertise, disposable, kan disposal, how to dispose the certain chemical, and how to train the one that or I mean orang yang conduct the pesticide and so on, and offence as well juga termasuk dalam this law. Maksudnya, let's say kalau someone or some people suddenly die due to certain use of pesticide, then of course the action will be taken under this law. And the power to make regulation, beside the committee, okay, you have to list it. I mean, under the law, it has to be listed siapa yang berkuasa, yang paling berkuasa at the is head of the state, minister ke, general director and so on. So semua ni perlu ada dalam the general pesticide law. Okay, so in Malaysia, our legislation of pesticide is actually analysed under the Act 149. Okay, sorry, Pesticide Act 1974. Okay, and under this Pesticide Act, this is in Malaysia tau, Akta Pesticide 1974. Okay, it's listed control of importation, manufacture of pesticide by registration, and also permit to distribute the pesticide and so on. And then under this act juga, they control the manufacture, sale, storage under by licensing. Maksudnya not everyone can produce or can manufacture unless you got a license. And then control of presence of pesticide in food. Okay, this is where macam certain production of food, dia kena listed, okay, adakah especially the one yang come from agriculture punya aspect kan, sama ada dia ni ada pesticide inside ke tak. So tu sebenarnya kena melalui this Pesticide Act 1974. And then also death and injury occasioned by pesticides and enforcement and others lah. And when you, let's say when you want to not identify, when you want to register a new product, you already have your product, for example, and then it has to be registered. And for the registration, okay, the members ataupun community ataupun the one yang involved in the law enforcement should identify the new product. And this identification process is based on, let's say, apa yang kamu buat lah, report yang kamu buat untuk register a new product. Okay, so ni tak, how to say, if you buy registered product, registered pesticide, kamu akan nampak all this information like their chemical name, trademark, commercial name, ingredients, active ingredients, and also inert material, and the formulation as well, whether it was produced under liquid form, at the granule or vegetable powder, or maybe aerosol, like we use in our home kan, macam reset and so on, tu adalah in form of aerosol or gases. And then of course manufacture, siapa yang manufactured also need to be clearly stated. And then in the form also need to list the technical features of the pesticide. At the based on their toxicity report, you have to classify, okay, whether your pesticide yang you want to register ni, adakah dia tu toxicity class 1, class 2, class 3. So how to apply the pesticide, whether you have to wet with, for example, like vegetable powder, you have to wet with, for example, 2 liters of water and then apply for area around 500 meter square ke. So tu adalah what we call it technical features. So before you start registration, register the pesticide, so you have to have reports that list all these things. Maksudnya semua ni kena ada. Okay, but I'm sure you realize that when you buy certain chemical, especially the one yang to say kata yang they produce organic insecticide, but usually kalau katalah kamu beli pesticide tu dia tak ada label, so it's basically not registered under this law. So anything happen to you when you use that kind of pesticide, kamu tak boleh ambil what we call it, you cannot do reports on, ataupun kamu tak boleh saman the producer because of that. Sebabnya risk adalah you buy something that was not registered. Okay, so selalunya company besar like Reset and so on, like you buy yang dekat supermarket kan, so dia dah ada label, detail label dekat dia punya products, compare to the one yang mungkin kamu beli dekat pasar malam, okay, kata boleh control aphid for example, and there is just a label yang dia tampal je kat situ, kata okay, ni adalah racun organik and so on, but it doesn't state dia punya chemical name, what is the ingredient inside, what is the active ingredient inside, and what is the formulation kan, ataupun juga dia mungkin tak state dia punya toxicity report. Okay, so selalunya if you face accident when you use this type of unregistered pesticide, kamu tak boleh ambil tindakan mahkamah and so on lah. Okay, so all pesticide must be approved and registered before being imported or manufactured. That's why you have to list what report on active ingredient, toxicity and so on. And then it will go through committee, baru committee decide, okay, ini betul ke tak betul ke? Is it can be produced ke? So if safe enough to be produced, then dia punya production tu will be registered lah. Okay, once you have your registered product, and then it can be import outside or manufactured secara besar-besaran, rather than kamu just jual dekat pasar malam and so on. Yang tu kalau kamu beli, you as a consumer kena tanggung risiko sendiri. And then like I said, it's also include formulation, and some of the reports, in detail report, may include how to prepare the materials and or even in fact the packaging the product as well. Macam mana nak package, is it in term of macam you use aluminium foil ke, ataupun maybe you require certain type of bottle ke kan. So tu semuanya should be listed in the report waktu application of the pesticide to be registered under this act. Okay, now we go to the pesticide types. Okay, types you can classify based on the punya spectrum of usage, and also based on the group of the chemical itself. So we can first separate the group of pesticide according to generation. Okay, we have first generation of pesticide, and then we have second generation of pesticide. Okay, first generation pesticide is actually pesticide that produced before the World War II. Okay, before the Second World War. And then the second type, which is second generation pesticide, is actually the one that produced after the Second World War. Okay, so for the first generation of pesticide, usually produced, like previously I said, during our IPM lecture. Okay, the purpose is to control the pest. But for the second generation pesticide, the main purpose is to eradicate. So maksudnya the second generation is usually more effective compared to the first generation. Okay, so for the first generation pesticide, we have pesticide from inorganic compound like lead and mercury, where you can find this compound in minerals, okay, exist in nature, in mineral, or maybe also come from botanical or from plant like nicotine, and then pyrethrin. Okay, nicotine, I'm sure everyone know we got the source mainly from tembakau. Okay, we have tembakau kan. Nicotiana tobacco, if I'm not mistaken, dia punya scientific name. And then we also have pyrethrin, which is derived from chrysanthemum cinerarifolium. Okay, it has a compound or chemical that can react on insect activity by targeting the nerve system of insects. So dia akan influence insect behavior. So this is pyrethrin. Okay, so we consider it as a botanic compound or organic compound. Maksudnya dia datang dari living things. Okay, here from the plant, which is chrysanthemum. And both of the organic and botanical or organic compound here for the first generation of pesticide, usually they are very or highly toxic to mammals, and also have long-term residual effect and easily causing environmental pollution. Like I said previously, like lead and mercury, we can find it in mineral, but in mineral, you imagine that kalau kamu tak kumpul dia, they exist only in low number. But when you want to make it as a pesticide, you have to collect kan. So dia kumpul banyak-banyak and it will have effect like environmental pollution, because since it's appear or in nature it's appear in mineral, so they have a very long residual effect. Maksudnya dia kekal dalam persekitaran untuk jangka masa yang lama compare to the one yang the second generation of insecticide, which some of it have a very short period of life. Okay, so for second generation pesticide, it's appear end of the Second World War, like I said, to eradicate the problem of pests. And of course, it's more effective. And this group of second generation, you cannot say that second generation ni dah tak ada sekarang. It's actually include insecticide that we have today. Okay, cumanya any type of insecticide or any type of pesticide that appear after Second World War II, we consider it as a second generation. There is no, for now, kita tak classify there is a third generation and so on. Okay. So in this second generation of pesticide, we have groups or types of pesticide that come from organochlorine. Okay. And then organophosphate, carbamate, and also synthetic pyrethroid. Okay, we will see these four group later, but the one in like organochlorine, DDT, it has a very long period of life, maksudnya boleh kekal lama in environment, and also it can biomagnify. Okay, and this is like I said, the major type of pesticide. For example, for insecticide, we can say that previously, like here, organochlorine. Okay, like I said, organochlorine. You can also say juga selain daripada organochlorine, is actually chlorinate hydrocarbon. The same thing. Okay, organochlorine ke, chlorinate hydrocarbon ke, it refers to the same thing. And this is the example. You can see DDT, aldrin, deldrin, linden, and so on. This is dia punya active ingredient. Okay, and this is the persistence in environment. Here, for example, like DDT, okay, they can appear or persist environment after you apply up until 15 years. So you imagine kalau kamu spray DDT hari ni, dia kekal dekat situ sampai around 15 years. So imagine dia punya damage will done to anything yang ada dekat situ lah. Sama ada kalau kamu tanam pokok kat situ and then kamu makan, it will turn back to you lah kan, dia punya effect. And it can biomagnify. Okay, nanti I will show you apa maksud biomagnify. And we have organophosphate like malathion, diazinon, all these things. It's actually dia punya persistence is around low to moderate, okay, around 2 weeks. But some can last several years, but maybe not up to 15 years lah. Okay, and then it cannot biomagnify, which is good. Maksudnya dia tak bertambah later in when increase in food change. Okay, and carbamate, and we also have synthetic pyrethroid, which is included in this group, botanical and also micro. Botanical. This is actually synthetic pyrethroid, the one that you synthetically produce from plant and so on. Okay, so this is the group, but this is under insecticide. You can see here. Now we have herbicide. Okay, here herbicide they categorized based on the punya either application, either it's systemic, either it's contact or soil tolerance. But let's say here, for example, glyphosate is actually if I'm not mistaken, it's actually group of organophosphate. Okay, so it's not actually dia sebenarnya adalah one of the group as well. Cumanya here in this table, dia listed based on dia punya application, either contact, systemic or soil sterilant. Okay, ni adalah application. And then we have fungicide, which is various chemical. Okay. Some of it is organochlorine, some of it is organophosphate. Okay, so this is the dia punya persistence, and then this is whether it's biomagnified or not. As you can see here, fumigants, for example, the one that I said was applied to control especially stock product pests. Okay, as you can see, it can the persistence in environment mostly high, so meaning that it can survive in the environment very long time, and also for most it's actually biomagnified. Because of that, you cannot simply use fumigants. Okay, for fumigation. Fumigants is for fumigation. Okay, so usually in storage, in gudang, for example, kan, when they apply fumigants or fumigation, they cannot simply directly apply on the products. Okay, sebabnya dia kekal lama. You imagine, so selalunya produk yang ada dalam gudang tu sebenarnya dia mungkin kena covered with something and so on before it's distribute. So usually dia buat macam tu. So maksudnya produk tu takkan terima directly the fumigants. Dia mungkin ada dalam kotak ke ataupun something that can avoid the fumigant to directly touch the product. Selalunya macam tu. Okay, and then they will fumigate all the area untuk control the pest. Okay, now we go to one by one type of pesticide tadi. They have organochlorine, or you can say it's also chlorinated hydrocarbon, which is the same thing. Usually it comes from the mineral, so of course it's stable and also persistence in environment. Here again I put it DDT, linden, chlorine, aldrin, daldrin, and so on. And when we are talking about chlorinated hydrocarbon, which is very persistent in the environment, of course, we will face with public concerns about the punya adverse effect on the environment and also on human health. Okay, so because of that, some of the chemical is actually banned. Maksudnya tak boleh guna at certain nation. Okay, for example, we have chemical like, for example, in Malaysia, if I'm not mistaken, we have some chemical like paraquat, if I'm not mistaken, it's usually banned under the law. But of course, you still can find the type of pesticide selling dekat certain kedai lah lagi still, tapi it's actually under we can say that dia punya distribution tu sebenarnya under strict regulation. Dia penggunaannya sebenarnya di ban, tak boleh guna dekat certain country, termasuklah Malaysia. Cumanya I'm not sure whether kita punya regulation is too loose ke tak, because some of it still can be sell. I mean, ada lagi yang masih jual this type of chemical untuk our farmers. Okay, and the effect of, for example, like DDT, there are advantage and of course disadvantage lah. Okay, so for advantage, in 1948 to 1970s, okay, around this time, the world, especially in Europe, Brazil, Egypt, and North America, they are facing a problem like malaria, okay, which is vectored by lice. Okay, for example, like typhus in lice, by lice, and also some of it's like mosquito, which is malaria, of course, also by mosquito, and some of it also they carry disease like yellow fever. Okay, so this disease is actually widespread during this time. So the advantage for DDT is actually it's very effective to control this spread of disease during that time. Maksudnya sebab dah terdesak, they use this type of DDT, okay, and it appear very effective during this time. Okay, but there is a disadvantage for DDT as well, since after they use this type to control all these pests or disease, there are massive decline. Ni ialah after application. So in 1965, there is a massive decline of fish in this Long Island, New York, after the spraying of DDT. Okay, sebabnya why decline of fish? Because DDT is actually thin the punya shell of eggs. Maksudnya dia nipiskan shell telur ikan. Okay, so of course because of this factor, dia punya telur tu mungkin tak survive and so on, and of course it cause a massive decline lah. So you can imagine, even pun kita kata okay, now it's affect fish, bukannya human. No, it's actually you imagine katalah fish tu adalah source of protein for human kan. So because of the decline, so it at the end will affect the human population as well. And there also decrease in large bird like osprey and eagle, the one that eat the fish. Okay, and also thinning the shell eggs or eggshell to this group of animals, osprey and eagle. And then for human, okay, it causes effect like headache, confusion, tremor and nausea. This is a mild effect, but for the bad effect, it's actually linked to breast cancer or many type of cancer, because DDT is actually mimics estrogen. So you imagine dia punya how to say acute effect mungkin nampak macam mild je kan, it can cause headache, confusion macam tu je, but DDT actually have a what we call it chronic effect. Later I will tell you apa chronic and apa acute effect. And then biomagnify, remember I put this word tadi kan, it can biomagnify, meaning it can increase in concentration of substance in the tissue of tolerance organism at successive higher level in food chain. Okay, maksud dia kat sini, okay, maksudnya kat sini, for example here, we have a food chain dari air, and then we have zooplankton inside the water, and the fish feed on zooplankton, and large fish feed on small fish, and then maybe large fish feed by human or maybe feed by birds. And then at the end, of course, the higher ranking, the last predator is basically human lah selalunya kan. So you imagine dari water, for example, the DDT concentration only one, but bila producer, for example like zooplankton, eat ataupun drink the water, they will receive the effect of 1,000. Okay, the concentration increase, but katalah small fish pula eat of this zooplankton or producer, so the punya concentration increase in small fish, and then katalah at the end human makan ikan or human makan burung whatsoever, okay, so the concentration is actually berganda. So you imagine effect dia dekat the last consumer is very high. Padahal dekat dalam air cuma satu je kan, tapi bila dia meningkat mengikut hierarchy dalam food chain, okay, dalam rantai makanan, dia punya concentration is increased. So which is very bad. Kamu katalah kamu tak makan ikan ke, ataupun kamu mungkin makan tak makan burung ke, makan ikan ke. So you imagine, even though kita kata macam tu, at the end the last consumer is human. So you imagine dia punya DDT concentration in human increase maybe more than 10,000, okay, 10 million, okay, I'm not sure. Kamu kira lah berapa kosong yang ada kat situ, okay. So that's how biomagnify is. Maksudnya even though it's very good to control the pest, is very effective and so on, tapi effect tu dekat human, effect dekat environment is very big. Okay, and then we have second group, which is organophosphate. Okay, this organophosphate is act on nervous system and usually being used to control termites and other insect pests, and also more toxic to vertebrate, and it has strong smell. For example, yang the most common use like malathion, okay, you may find glyphosate, diazinon, ni semuanya adalah type of chemical that usually you found it to control pests in not in our home, not for household application, but for orchard or orchard management lah. Selalunya kalau kamu ada kebun yang besar and then farmers or you buy to control pests and so on, usually they come from this type of or this group of pesticide, which is organophosphate. And again, I said it has a strong smell. Okay, once you smell the strong smell ni, kalau kamu bau je, okay, meaning that this kind of toxic or this kind of chemical is actually absorbed by your inhalation or also ingestion. Maksudnya kalau yang ni ingest kalau kamu makan lah, but even pun kamu hidup tu dia sebenarnya dah diabsorb by you. Okay, so it can cause acute toxicity, neurological effect, cardiac effect, and also cancer. So this is the bad effect of the organophosphate. Here is the example, like a malathion, previously I said, is widely used in agriculture to control the agricultural pests, and also some of it being used to control in control program like mosquito eradication. Okay, yang selalunya yang spray untuk control mosquito usually come from this type of organophosphate punya group. Okay, and then third one we have carbamates. The action is similar like organophosphate. It's also act on nervous system, but usually it will influence what we call it neurotransmitter. Okay, neurotransmitter, I think you already learn biology. This is basic knowledge. Okay, the one yang enzyme yang involved to delay information nerve kita kan. Contohnya kalau kamu sentuh and then it will transport through neurotransmitter and so on until the sampai brain. Okay, so let's say this carbamate is actually delay the activity of this enzyme, cholinesterase enzyme, which is neurotransmitter. So you may have problems like macam shaking kan. So selalunya because of this type of pesticide. And usually carbamate is a broad spectrum, meaning that it can, bila kita cakap broad spectrum, usually it not specific to certain type of pest. Maksudnya katalah kalau let's say you use carbamate, it can almost kill almost of the insect. So tu yang kita panggil broad spectrum, but certain type of pesticide is just specific to certain thing, certain group of insects. So example, we have Propaca, Bendiocarp, Mancozeb, Carbaryl, Carbofurans, and etc. lah. Okay, this is the example. Here, remember tadi waktu saya kata you have when you have a new pesticide that need to be registered, you have to have commercial name kan, you have to have dia punya application, adakah dia tu in term of wettable ke, dia punya formulation macam mana, in term of wettable ke, aerosol ke, and then they also need to list the ingredients. Okay, we have active ingredient, we have inert ingredients. So here kalau kamu tengok contoh kat sini, Mancozeb, M45 is actually the punya commercial names, okay. And then here is a formulation. They said vegetable powder. Serbuk bancuh is actually vegetable powder. You need to is actually in form of a powder, and then you need to put water and then baru apply. And then here it's actually the punya content or active ingredient. Perawis aktif, okay, is active ingredient which is mancozeb. Okay, and then we have perawis lengai here in bahasa is actually inert ingredient. Okay, so the active ingredient mancozeb is around 80% from the total, and another 2% is actually inert material. Okay, so this is how the label looks like. And this is another example of carbamates insecticide. For example, like tiram here to control mostly to control disease caused by fungi like Rhizoctonia and Phytium. Okay, now the third group, we have pyrethroid, which is a synthetic compound resemble the chemical structure of pyrethrin. Remember tadi I mentioned to you that we have pyrethrin come from chrysanthemum. Okay, remember chrysanthemum tadi, they produce pyrethrin, which is first generation of insecticide. But now we have second generation of insecticide, which is actually synthetic compound that resemble the pyrethrin. Okay, it's actually synthetic compound. Dia bukannya come directly from the flowers. Okay, and then this pyrethroid usually constituted by majority of commercial household insecticide. So the one yang kita guna dekat rumah, household use, usually come from this group, which is pyrethroid or synthetic pyrethrin. Maksudnya dia synthetic, dia seolah-olah menyerupai pyrethrin, but it's actually synthetic. Okay, and it's effective at low dose. Maksudnya you don't have to have active ingredient yang banyak. Like mancozeb tadi, active ingredient almost 80%, right? But for pyrethroid, synthetic pyrethroid is actually effective at very low dosage. And this is the example like tetrametrin, cypermethrin, cyflutrin. Okay, effective to control any type of pests that appear in your house like cockroach, fly and mosquito. And of course, since I said we actually safe for the use of household, so it has low mammalian toxicity, but it still can be toxic to fish, bee and aquatic insect. Cumanya dia tak ada low effect on human lah, mammals. Okay, this is the example. We have cypermethrin. Okay, cypermethrin is actually active ingredient. Okay, yang ni tak nampak jelas, but it's actually active ingredient. If you look at the punya content, usually it may consist active ingredient that less than 1%, maybe 0.001%. Other 99.99% is actually inert material. Inert material adalah benda yang mungkin kamu campur, but it cannot, it's not actually a chemical that can cause damage to pests or to human and so on. Cumanya mungkin bila kamu campur ni, dia baru the active ingredient tu baru berkesan. Okay, tapi the one that can kill the pesticide, the pest is actually the active ingredient, which is here is cypermethrin. Okay, and cypermethrin is broad spectrum insecticide. Like I said, dia boleh kill almost of the organism, cumanya almost of the insect, cumanya it's won't or give less damage to mammalian, and it can behave as a fast-acting neurotoxin in insect. It's affect the neurotransmitter tadi, and it can easily degrade, which is good. Maksudnya bila kamu spray somewhere, it can last about maybe around a week sahaja, and then it's degrade. So dah tak ada dah. Okay, that's why we can use it at the macam dekat indoor mungkin you can spray on the table and so on. Cumanya it will last there, kalau kamu tak sapu, tak bersih, it will last there around for weeks. But of course you still cannot spray dekat makanan lah. Okay, since you will eat that food kan, so it's not applicable dekat food or other things. And then when you expose this type of pesticide to sunlight, water and oxygen, it will degrade more faster. Or it can decompose more faster. Maksudnya katalah compare to indoor and outdoor, kamu spray kan. So yang indoor mungkin tahan seminggu dia punya kesan. But for outdoor mungkin only for 2 days. So because the exposure to sunlight, water and oxygen akan degrade dia lagi cepat. Okay, and again here type of pesticide also can be classified into, like I said, selective and non-selective. For example, we can see here almost obvious in herbicide lah. We have selective, which is targeted specifically on certain weed, okay, and then it will become less toxic to certain weed lah. Maksudnya katalah you use it like 2,4-D here, which is selectively toxic to broadleaf, meaning that kalau kamu spray on grasses, okay, dia takkan effective. Dia takkan buat grass kamu mati, yang grasses. Broadleaf is the one yang I'm sure you can separate lah broadleaf and wheat kan. Broadleaf and grasses. Okay, so kalau kamu spray yang specific or selective on broadleaf sahaja, it won't work on grasses. But if you spray yang what we call it non-selective, okay, non-selective or broad spectrum, like paraquat, glyphosate, it's actually it can control both broadleaf and grasses. So you spray je dua-dua mati. But for the one that's selective, dia akan targeted certain species sahaja. Okay, now we go to toxicity of pesticide. Okay, when we're talking about toxicity, it's actually capacity of the pesticide or ability of pesticide to cause injury or illness to, usually to mammals lah. We consider it as to mammals. And then usually we describe this type of toxicity based on or subject to the test animal of varying dosage, and also depend on the active ingredient lah kan. Okay, and there is a two type of toxicity, which is acute and chronic. So acute toxicity refers to chemical ability that can cause sudden injury, ataupun you can see the effect in very short duration. It will cause injury to person or animal with single exposure. Maksudnya kamu spray je, kamu terus nampak dia mati. Okay, to what we call it acute toxicity. Okay, and the acute toxicity, it can expose to human. Now we are talking about human, since toxicity ni usually subject test animal dia adalah mammals. Okay, and the routes of exposure, it can be at the dermals, maksudnya it can when it's got contact with your skin, or maybe from inhalation, maksudnya bila kamu bernafas atau hidu, and also can be oral or digestion, maksudnya bila injection, bila kamu makan, and it can also come or in contact with human through eyes, maksudnya bila chemical tu macam terkena mata, masuk dalam mata and so on. So tu adalah dia punya route of exposure. And it's measured as the amount of concentration of the toxicant, bahan kimia tadi, or the AI, active ingredient that require to kill 50% of the animal in test population. Maksudnya when you spray, for example, certain toxicant at certain concentration, it will kill 50% of the test population. So we consider it 50% ni sama ada what we call it LD15 or LC15. Apa benda maksud LD, LC ni is a lethal dosage. Okay. LD lethal dosage, LC is lethal concentration. Maksudnya concentration yang mana yang menyebabkan kematian kepada subjek, 50% kematian kepada subjek. And this is how we measure the acute toxicity. But for chronic toxicity, okay, is usually it cannot very well determined usually because it take a long term of exposure and the effect juga mungkin appear in long term of period rather than sudden. Okay, maksudnya kalau kamu spray hari ni, you cannot see the chronic effect today. So it will take a long period of time. Sometimes dia punya exposure tu mungkin require the effect appear after I don't know, maybe 1 year of exposure, for example. So to what we call it chronic toxicity. And usually the harmful effect that occur from small doses, okay, repeated over a period of time. Here we call it as a chronic effect. Okay, maksudnya dia bukan just single exposure. You have to be exposed a few times or exposed in certain period of time baru dia punya toxicity ataupun effect of the toxicity tu appear. Okay, for example, it include birth defects, production of tumor, blood disorder, neurotoxic effect. Okay, this is the thing that kamu tak boleh nampak sudden effect. Kan, birth defects ni mungkin it will take katalah pregnant ladies for example kan, mungkin ambil masa mungkin exposed to certain type of chemicals and then at the end dia punya babies mungkin defect in certain body parts. Okay, so it won't show you direct effect and it will take a long term of period untuk tentukan is it actually a chronic effect from the exposure of the chemical ke tak. Okay, so that's why it's more difficult to determine lah. Okay, so when we are talking about acute toxicity tadi, yang saya kata bila kamu spray je single exposure, it already gave the effect. Sama ada dia mati ke tak, the population to decrease 50% ke tak. So once they identify the dia punya acute toxicity level, so they separate it based on 4 categories, which is toxicity category class, or we can say it's class 1, class 2, class 3 and 4. Okay, so for toxicity category class 1, which is highly toxic, exposure of a few drops, okay, imagine few drops of the materials taken orally could be fatal to 150 pound person. Maksudnya kalau kamu bagi this highly toxic compound, okay, just a few drop and the person die. Okay, and for the category class 1, usually you won't see the chemical maksudnya sell apa dekat common market or common shop. So dia tak ada, it's very, it's a control chemical actually for the toxicity category class 1. For toxicity category class 2 is moderately toxic. Okay, a teaspoon, tadi drops, now a teaspoon banyak sikit kan. To an ounce of this material could be fatal to 150 pound person. Maksudnya you give a 1 teaspoon or maybe ounce of the material, then that person will die. Okay, this is toxicity category class 2. Meanwhile, for toxicity category class 3 and 4, we consider it as a slightly toxic or relatively non-toxic because you require this type of materials to kill one person, which is 150 pound person, more than 1 ounce. Maksudnya mungkin if you give them sebotol, katalah sebotol 1 liter kan, then there is a possibility that that person die lah. Okay, so this is what we call it acute toxicity category. Okay, you can read this table by your own. Okay, there are route of exposure, oral inhalation, dermal, eye, skin effect, signal word. Okay, here last, skin effect and signal words. Okay, usually skin effect, some of the chemical there was stated dekat dia punya label, is it corrosive, is it irritant, and so on. But some tak ada. Okay, but for the signal words, usually there is a signal words at the danger word, warning, caution, and maybe caution. But sometimes rather than put a single word, rather than put a signal words, some of chemical they have colors, warning colors. Maksudnya contohnya kat sini. Okay, if you look at this pesticide, we have class 4. For example, you have reset dekat rumah kan, which is for household use. So dia punya toxicity category class 4. Meanwhile, we have mospilin, which is used to control agricultural pests, which is class 3. Okay, and then we have class 2. Here is actually to control ticos, okay, rats, and we have also class 2 to control termite. Okay, as if you look here, okay, yang ni tak nampak sangat kan. The signal words, okay, sometimes danger, poison, warning, caution. Okay, since ni produce in bahasa, so you can see only dia put kat sini just beracun. But okay, it represent the color as well. Okay, here kalau kamu tengok, it's actually yellow. Ni pun yellow kan? If you realize lah. Kalau kamu tak tengok slide, mungkin kamu tak perasan pun. Okay, if you realize, it's actually class 2 is represented by yellow. Usually, if I'm not mistaken, class 1 sama ada red atau black. If I'm not mistaken, the class 1 group. But class 3 is actually blue. Okay, and class 4, sometimes you will see sama ada dia just colour putih atau tak ada colour kan, or sometimes it's represent colour green colour, maksudnya dia colour hijau. Okay, so tu adalah class 4, sama ada putih atau tak ada colour ataupun colour hijau. So here kita dah boleh nampak toxicity of the pesticide based on dia punya colour and also warning or signal words. Okay, so last but not least, we have part how to handle and apply pesticide safely. Okay, so yang ni I'm sure for the household use, mungkin kamu macam tak kisah sangat, you can use just okay, ambil dan spray because it's very low mammalian toxicity. But actually to apply or to handle the pesticide safely, okay, first you have to read and follow all label instruction. Okay, that's why I said the one yang commercially produced and registered product of the pesticide, dia akan selalunya datang dengan label or instruction. Bukannya just tampal tulis okay apa ada kat dalam tu, siapa produk hasil apa. No, this is for example warning label, not warning label, is instruction yang ada dekat produk. Okay, so read the label first. Dia memang akan ada brochure even though you buy pesticide yang untuk apply dekat kebun, for example like Malatayon and so on, it's actually come with brochure. Cumanya kamu tak perasan sebab dia nampak macam seolah-olah macam label tampal kat situ satu je. Okay, kalau kamu buka kat tepi, it's actually a very small brochure. Kat dalam tu dia akan bagi tahu how to use it, macam mana dia punya usage, how to apply and so on, and berapa dia punya content and so on. Okay, yang content ni selalunya mungkin kat depan lah, you may read tanpa buka that kind of brochure. For those yang I don't know, mungkin your fathers or mothers usually use ataupun mungkin ada ladang and so on. Kalau kamu tengok that kind of product, dia sebenarnya ada very small how to say brochure actually attached dekat label yang kamu nampak. Kalau kamu tak buka, dia just nampak macam satu label je. Dia sebenarnya kat tepi tu ada, dia berlipat. Okay, but for those yang mungkin buy from Shopee yang kata okay organic insecticide but not properly manufactured, dan yang tu mungkin takkan ada label lah. Okay, and then second, you read the warning label. After dah read instruction, tengok dia punya warning label. Is it poison? Is it corrosive? Dia punya colour macam mana? So read the warning label first. Barulah tahu okay, you have to apply macam guna what material, sarung tangan ke, ataupun mungkin tak boleh bancuh dalam bekas plastik ke and so on. So please read the warning label. And then here again, use appropriate container for measuring, mixing and applying pesticide, because some is very corrosive, mungkin tak boleh guna dekat certain materials, and mix only the amount of product that you intend to use. Okay, maksudnya katalah kamu baca dekat produk, they said okay, you have to apply for 1 meter square or for 500 meter square, for example. You have to apply 1 drops of chemical to 10 gallons of water, for example lah kan. Dia memang dah ada listed kat situ. So you just bancuh apa yang amount yang kamu perlu sahaja, rather than bancuh semua botol. Because when you bancuh semua, nanti later on you have a problem macam mana nak dispose kan, sebab tak habis guna and so on. So please mix only the amount that you intend to use. Okay, and then wash all equipment after each use. So tak boleh just ambil tuang-tuang and tinggal kat situ. You have to wash, and do not allow runoff from washing to go into waterways. Selalunya katalah instead of dia pergi masuk dalam sungai, you have to wash certain area, mungkin dia absorb tanah. When it goes to waterways, terus masuk ikan ada dalam arit and so on. The materials ataupun the chemical that basuh tadi drinking air mengalir, and we have to wash a lot this, but you cannot allow it run off from washing tu masuk ke your waterway. Okay, and then the warning instruction in the tadi, you safety equipment kan, contohnya dalam gambar lah, mask punya they wear fully covered clothes, pakai, so it depend on the pesticide that you use. So drink or eat white drink, that residue tu mungkin ada and come in contact with inhale ataupun mungkin ingestion, you never know. So I can say that please or white chemical. So tak kisahlah dalam our case, let's say if you